It's been a long time coming here on the channel, but finally, after a long wait, we are starting our crafting adventure through Wave Echo Cave from Lost Mine of Phandelver here on the channel. And I am so excited because this week we are starting with the most basic building block that we're gonna need to build this section of the adventure, and that's the cave tile. Let's jump into it. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Garmin. This, of course, is the Storycraft Society, and I am so excited to welcome you back to the channel this week because we are finally starting something that I set out to do over a year ago, which is to craft all of the terrain that you would need for a Lost Mine of Phandelver adventure. I've got a lot of older videos where basically we've done every single piece that you'd need to run that adventure, that you can make it yourself with your own two hands and not spend a whole lot of money doing it. I really recommend you check out all those videos. I'm not going to necessarily link all of them in the description below, but I've got all kinds of playlists on the channel if you want to check those out. But this week we are starting something that I've really had a lot of mental block trying to get into, and that is crafting Wave Echo Cave. Now, anyone who knows this adventure knows that that's one of the biggest parts of this adventure. It is a very complex cave system, and I really didn't know how I wanted to do it. And that's when I actually reached out to the community here in the Storycraft Society. I reached out in a video and I said, give me your ideas, give me your suggestions. What can I do that I'm not thinking about doing? And boy, did everybody just absolutely exceed my expectations. So anyone who wrote a response back, thank you so much. I read through all of those and I got a lot of great ideas, and it didn't help me at all. And that's actually in the best way. What I realized was so many people sold me from so many different directions that honestly, it was just one of those things where I decided, why do I have to stick to one method? So I'm actually going to be crafting a lot of different ways for this particular section of the adventure. And I think that's going to be really fun. But to start this series off, we're actually going to kind of do a throwback to the Redbrand Hideout videos. I did a video on cave tiles, but they were all flat. And the reason that I did that is I'm not a huge fan of the big tall walls because they block your player's view of the game board, and that's no fun because everybody wants to be able to see and no one wants to have to stand up and look down in. But that doesn't make for the nicest looking backdrop, and I felt like this section of the adventure deserves a really exciting backdrop to our set pieces. For a lot of this video, if you want to see how I did some of the more basic things, then please jump back to the Redbrand Hideout Caves video. I will link that one in the description below. Watch that first, and then that will give you the basis that you need to jump into this video. But really, honestly, none of the concepts are that complicated if you just want to keep watching with me here. And then just go back and check that one if something is confusing. With that said, let's dive in to making cool cave wall tiles. So the basics of this set are going to start with 4 shapes, and these are the 4 shaped tiles that we're going to be making. So one is going to be a flat wall, one is going to be a corner piece like this, one is going to be what I call a pillar piece, and then the last one is going to be a diagonal. This is going to make it so that our rooms don't always look completely like just squares and rectangle variants. Just like any tile set that you make, corners are going to be more important than flat pieces. Every time I do this and I make a mistake, the mistake is always that I make too many of the flat pieces and not enough of the corners. So with this said, let's go ahead and get our actual 3x3 by 1/2 inch tiles cut, and then we're going to start working on cutting out all of these walls. So to start with the flat walls, what we're going to do is actually cut out a block of foam that's going to be 1-ish inch by 3 inches. That's the length of our 3x3 tiles. And then it's going to be 1.5 inches high. Now, the reason I say it's 1-ish inch thick is I actually really encourage you to make the thickness varied, because that's going to make the walls look the most cavern-like as they weave in and out when you put multiple pieces together. So once you have that block cut out, you're actually going to then go in and cut a wavy edge on one side. This is going to be the side that actually is to the inside of your tile, and what you want is to get like a cavern-looking wall, so you can make some a little bit more exaggerated, some a little bit flatter, and that will just aid to the experience. Once you have that done, then you're going to do the exact same thing, but you're going to tilt the piece to an angle and cut off the top edge. That's gonna get you so that it doesn't look so, let's go with synthetic. It'll give it more things that can catch your eye so it looks a little bit more natural. One thing that I will mention is actually while I was filming this, I realized that I messed up, and what I didn't do is I didn't cut the height down to 1.5 inches. So that's no harm, no foul. I just trim the piece down to a 1.5 inch height, and then I take and go ahead and recut that top edge, because if I wouldn't have, it wouldn't have been tall enough. When it's done, it's gonna look like this. And I really like how already it's starting to look like a cave wall. A lot of juice in a big project like this is seeing interesting and fun results really quickly. We're going to move on to our next type of piece, which is the corner piece. Now, I find myself with the corner pieces worrying a lot about finding the least amount of scrap that I can end up with. I don't consider myself to have a super talent with looking at a piece like that and finding the way to minimize the scrap. But the best way that I've found so far to do it is I actually will take a 3x4 by 1.5 inch tall block of XPS foam, and then I'm gonna take and mark out 1 inch off of each side. I'll use those lines to cut out my corner pieces that will end up being about 1 inch-ish thick. This does end up with a block in the middle, but I find that that block that comes out of the middle is very, very usable, so it doesn't feel so much like scrap for me. Once we have our corners cut out, then we're gonna cut those wavy lines into them the exact same way that we did our flat wall pieces, except we're gonna be doing the inside of this corner, and then of course you're gonna cut the same upper diagonal, and then those are gonna come out like this. Now the next piece we're going to be doing is what I call the pillars, but actually what it is it's the outside corner. So it's going to be the piece that fits to the outside if you're putting your walls out. For these, I start with a 1-ish by 1-ish by 1.5 inch tall block of XPS. And then I'm gonna cut that out exactly the same way that I do the walls, except now I'm gonna do the outside 2 sides. This is the easiest piece I think by far to do, just because there's least amount of surface area and you're not having to worry about being inside of a corner. All right, so the last type of tile that we're gonna be making in this video is the diagonals. And diagonals are made just a little bit different. Start with your 3x3 tile and you're gonna cut them from corner to corner so you make the little diagonal piece. Then you can use that to mark your block that will fit down in to make your wall. This is easy, you just then cut those lines and then just go to the thin side, and then that's where you're going to make your wavy cuts, both on the front and then the top edge. So once you have all of those done, you're gonna have what really starts to look like a nice tile set. And you're gonna have something that I really think is gonna help sell Wave Echo Cave to your players. But we're not done yet, so now we're gonna jump into gluing all these pieces together, and then we're gonna move on from there. One thing real quick that I should mention is I actually messed up. Before you glue them onto your tiles, you actually want to do your tin foil balling, because that just makes it so much easier to get down into the corners and such. Corners and such? The corners and such. Very high British. Is that even high British? I don't know. So what I had to do is, with the pieces all glued together, then I had to go in with my tinfoil ball and hit all of the visible spaces on my walls. Now I don't do any of the actual bottoms of the tiles because we're not gonna see those, that's gonna get covered up with sand. But after you have that all tinfoil balled up and glued together, then it's time to move on to the most important part of this project, which is fixing the bottom corner. Right now it is such an ugly line that it's like straight up and then straight out. That doesn't look like a cave wall. So what we're gonna do is pull out any material of your choice. That could be plaster, it could be tile grout, it could be a dirt and PVA mixture if you're looking to save a little money. What we're gonna do is we're gonna mix that up to a fairly thick consistency. In this clip, it's a little too runny for me. I should have made it just a touch thicker than it was, and I ended up doing that in later steps that I didn't film. But so you want to make it just a little bit thicker than you normally would, and then you're just going to take and pour it out into that crack and use your finger to feather and make a smooth cave transition from the floor of the cave up into the wall of the cave. And it's really an easy step that doesn't take a whole lot of time, but it is really worth it when you do it. So far, this is the first part that we're gonna have dry time in this project, and that's just how it goes. Sometimes you have to wait around for it to dry. So you're gonna wanna let that plaster dry all the way. Don't rush that, give it a couple of hours to really set up before you move on to the next part, which is pulling out your Eileen's tacky glue, and you're going to be putting that all over the bottom of your tile. Sprinkle sand over top of that, and that's how our bases are gonna end up looking like awesome, awesome cave floor. Another pit that you're just gonna have to sit around and wait for that to dry but that's okay. That's where you can read the adventure and learn all the stuff about it. Oh boy. So with the unfortunately long dry times over, we are now able to move on to the final step of this, which is getting it all painted up. So we're gonna start with Blackmagic Craft Base Coat, which is just a 50-50 mixture of black acrylic craft paint and matte Mod Podge. This is gonna lock all of our sand and plaster and foam together, as well as strengthening our foam up a little bit. And then of course it gives us a nice flat black to start painting up from. And I decided to go with my 3-paint scheme for both the floors and the walls. So for my base coat on the floors, I went with a Liquitex Raw Umber, followed up by a dry brushing of Americana's Milk Chocolate, and then of course the final highlight was with Folk Art Coffee Latte. For the walls, I went with a base coat of Americana Charcoal Gray, then I did a dry brushing of Apple Barrel Pewter Gray, followed up by a light dry brushing of Khaki over the top to give it kind of a dirty cave wall feel. Now, I laid out the 3 stages of this so you can kind of see what the process looks like. If you want to see more of how I do my painting, you can check out, I will link it in the description below, my Lazy Crafter's Guide to Painting Terrain, which really breaks it down because I'm not a huge fan of the painting process. I just don't find it that enjoyable. Crafting is the thing that really gets me going. So if you want to check out that video, I explain the easiest way that I've come up with to paint terrain, and that's basically exactly how I did this. Well, all right. I'm not gonna do anything special to end this video because honestly, the special stuff is what's coming up next. So like I said before, this is just the building block, the first thing we need to do before we can go on this adventure of crafting our way through Wave Echo Cave, because we're gonna be using this stuff a lot. Now I'm gonna be doing some set pieces and I'm gonna be doing some other more specific small things, but we're gonna be using these tiles over and over and over again. But with that said, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, definitely leave me a like down below or a comment about what you're excited to see when we get to it in Wave Echo Cave. That certainly would be fun. Thank you again to all of the people who commented on the last video. Without your help, I don't think I would have gotten to this series, so I'm so appreciative of that, and I can't wait to show everyone what is gonna come out of these next couple of weeks. I am really, really excited. Be sure to check out all the other videos on the channel. We have merch listed in the description below as well if you wanna help the channel out financially. But with all that said, until next week, all I can say is, I'll be seeing you. There's a lot of tiles. Like this is a lot. Like I thought the Redbrand Hideout was a lot. And this is more than that by a lot. All right, next week.